Hi friend, how are you this day after Christmas? I hope you had a beautiful day. Greg and I enjoyed just quiet time since well, we get a lot of quiet time right now, but that's okay. We had a wonderful day. And I hope you went over to my Facebook community, Quilt Along with Pat Sloan, where there was a lovely display, just amazing display of your Christmas decorations. And I tell you, I was taking notes because a lot of you have done lights within your things, like strings of little twinkle lights. It's like, I need to, that's on my agenda for next. I might just need twinkle lights like all the time because they're just so pretty. The other day we had a question from Linda asking whether the thread color, your thread should match your binding when you're putting a binding on a quilt, or whether it should match the background. And it should match the binding. But I thought, well, let me just take this a step further. Since I'm putting binding on my Dear Jane, and it's not quite done, which is perfect. So I do a lot of my binding by machine, but this one I'm doing by hand. So I thought, well, let me just show you how I do it. You might find something I do that's interesting that you want to try that maybe you don't try. So let's take a look. First, we'll look at some of the tools that I use when I'm doing binding, and I actually use the same tools for applique, for hand applique. This is pretty much what I use. I need something to carry things around in, so we'll get real close here so you can see all the parts of all of this. We'll get everything into the frame. All right, so I have a couple things. I like this little box from the Fat Quarter Shop that can keep this, because I can move this around. I can put this in another container. You know me, I like containers. So containers go into other containers. I've got a small pair of scissors. I've got 50 weight thread. I have a needle threader by Clover, and I'm going to show you how that works. I have a pin cushion, and I usually clip here's some Wonder clips. So I'll put them on the edge of the box if I'm working with them. The needles I'm going to tell you about, and I've got two colors of thread we're going to talk about here for the binding. This is my Dear Jane again, in case I didn't say that. So the needles, I like to use a straw needle, and they're a little bit longer, so they might be a little strange for some people, but I always used a longer needle, so I really like the straw needles. One of the properties of straw needles is that they are, I think because they're a little bit longer, they're flexible, and so they will bend. And let's see where I can put this. So if you can see that it is bent. It is not a straight needle, and I'm going to put a straight one next to it. These are the 10. There, you can see. Whoops, they rolled together. There you go. You see how this one is bent and the other one is straight. So let's do the straight needle first. The straight needle, like I bend them on purpose because I like them bent, but to do the needle threader, the needle threader itself has a hole here that says needle slot. So you're going to put the eye of the needle in here, and the needle will need to stand sort of straight up. Let's see if you can see it. Got the back of the box there? Yeah, there. You can see the needle. It's standing straight up, which I'm going to tell you the properties of the curved needle because it doesn't stand straight up. What's going to happen is when I push this hook, I don't have any thread in here yet, but when I push this hook, do you see the mechanism moving? What that's doing is there's a little hook that goes through the eye and pulls. The hook goes through the eye and pulls. And when it's doing that, it's going to pull the thread through the eye, just a teeny weeny little bit, just a fraction. And so you can't just go whipping this needle out of here or you will unthread it. So I will take about an arm's length worth of thread. There's actually a cutter on here, so I can just cut it right on there. That's what it says, cutter. So there's just a little cutter there. Now I'm going to take the thread and lay it here and pull it back towards the lever because that is the direction that's best. And sometimes I will hold it back here and push the button, but usually if I've just sort of snuggled it in there, it works just fine on a straight needle. So I've got a straight needle, I push this down, the lever goes through the hole, pushing the thread through the hole, and then the lever comes out. So when I pick this up, there will be a teeny tiny loop There, you can see the loop comes through, so then I just grab that loop and go. And now my needle is threaded. Let me show you with the, I'll get another piece of thread. I'll show you with the bent needle, because the bent needle, if your needle has started to bend, when you stick it in here, it's no longer straight. I get to get the eye down there. So the needle in here is bent. Can you see that? Yeah, see how it's bent? It's arced. So I want to be sure that I'm not making the top of it straight. I want to make the base that's sitting inside where the lever is going to go through, the eye, the base has to be straight. So that means the top of my needle is curved, which is fine. I'm not threading the needle point. I'm threading the base, the eye. So I put it in here, I push the lever down, and voila, the eye is threaded. Now if it didn't thread on a curved needle, then just adjust it, or you may actually have to hold the needle straight in there so it doesn't wobble, depending on how much you've bent your needle. So now that was a really short piece of thread. What I'm going to do is take that one out, because we're going to thread the bent needle. Actually, when I get a new needle, I take it in my fingers and I bend it. And I make it a little bit curved, because that is what I like. I like a curved needle. I don't really like to work with a straight needle, and I think that's why I like these straws, because they're long enough I can curve them. All right, so if I'm going to stitch with pink on here, because I'm going to show you two things. First, binding like I do it, and then I'll show you a whip stitch, which I think a lot of people do whip stitch and then they don't know why their thread is showing. So let's first do the whip stitch. So I just made a little knot. I know somebody's going to say, how did you make your knot? It's on the pink here. Let me see if I can pull it up here so you can see. I just wrap it around my finger. This is what I learned in 3rd grade, and roll it off, and I make a big lumpy knot. I don't really care if the knot is fancy or small, because I'm doing binding. So I will pull I can either pull it into the seam. It's in the seam allowance. So basically I am stitching. I got to get where you can see it. I'm looking in this other camera here. All right, so up here you can see me, right? So here is the needle coming through, and then now I want to pull my binding up so that it covers. And then you may want to put like a binding clip, you know, if you want to put a couple of those to hold it. They are awesome, so that way you don't have to sort of be thinking ahead to there. I don't need them that close. So there's a couple of binding clips. All right, so if I am going to stitch this and I want to get in the edge of the binding, so that I am going to, if I was going to do, let me do what I normally do. Okay, so I'm going to come down, get that thread out of there. So I want to come down exactly across the street from where I am. You know, I'm coming up right here. I want to come down right next to it. I don't want to have any movement. I don't want to be rotating anywhere. And then when I come up, I want to come up right into the edge. Okay, so I'm coming up right into the fold, right where the crease of the fold is. That's how I like to do it. And then I will come down right in the background and then grab the binding right on that fold and go along. Now, of course, I work a lot faster when I've got it closer to my face and I'm not trying to show you. So I'm doing pink, and you pretty much can't see that pink on there. Let me see if I can get it that close. Oh, it's too close. There we go. So you can't really see that pink. Now I'm going to show you what a whip stitch is, because a lot of people will do a whip stitch for their binding, and on a whip stitch you're basically moving forward. You're not going right across the street. Right across the street is you're going directly. You come up and you go down directly. That way there's no traveling of your thread. But a whip stitch, the thread travels. So people come up, the thread is up, but they'll come down over here, like 1/8 of an inch away. They'll come down 1/8 of an inch away, and then they'll come up, and then they'll come down you know, and they'll travel, they'll come down a distance away from where they came up. And when you're doing this, you will see the thread because you, oh, come on, I put too much lotion on my hands. There we go. So you can see the thread here because I've been whip stitching. So that's the difference between just where it's disappearing over here. You don't even see it because it is just tucked in here, here, here. But then as soon as I start whip stitching, you see the line, you see the line. And that's where the difference is, particularly if you're hand appliquing, you don't really want to whip stitch. You want to do this maneuver over here. So let me do a few more proper. And let me get back out a little bit. All right. There we go, up, and then go right across, and then up. Get rid of the clip now. There we go. Alrighty, that is how I process all of this and how I think about my applique or my binding stitch. Is I do the same stitch for whether it's hand applique or it's binding, and it's always coming up and going straight down, coming up and going straight down, and you travel through the fabric underneath, never on the surface. So you never have lines of fabric on the surface. At least I don't, because that would be a whip stitch. So which a whip stitch is fine if you don't mind the thread being up there. You do have a little more chance of that thread being caught and broken on, you know, like snapped on something, because now you have the thread on the surface. It's not tucked within the fabric. So it's actually more secure to tuck it in like I do. And that is it. I want to show you the quilt again because I can't tell you, I'm so excited to have at this point. The binding is almost done. Almost done. I think I have 2 sides to do. So here it is. The Dear Jane. Oh my good. Dear Jane meets the alphabet. And of course it's officially called a Baby Jane in Janiac talk because it is not all the blocks. You know, and if I had not done this blended sampler, I think I'd be tempted to go back and do the Dear Jane. And who knows? Who knows? I may still go back and do the full Dear Jane quilt, which is from Jane Stickles' Civil War era quilt. And it has this gorgeous triangle, you know, patchwork triangles all along, or ice cream cone shapes all along the edge of it. It is fabulous. I'll just pop a picture up here of the original Dear Jane so that you can see what it looks like. But mine is a version, and so it's to that point. I am so excited. Cannot tell you. So, well, I hope that you like that little binding tutorial or just show and tell of how I do it. If you have some other tips, just leave them in the comments or put them over at our Facebook community. Remember, there's no Socialites block this week nor next week because Friday is once again next week on New Year's Day, so we won't be doing a block until the next week. And if you've not joined in Socialites, you still have time. And one quick zip around, you can see where I'm at with the Aurifil blocks. Da-da-da-da-da. I'm moving along, getting a little bit more up there for you to see. All right, my friend, links are below. Thank you so much. Mwah. I love you. We'll see you on live.